Welcome to the Lilac City Leadership Podcast. I am Tyler Lafferty, local serial entrepreneur, founder of Seven2, 14.4, The Union, Method, Juice Cafe, and a few others. So I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. Great to have you, Tyler. So Tyler, in your intro, you mentioned a lot of companies that you founded, and so that's something that I've picked up on, and since I met you a few weeks back, I was kind of looking into the companies that you've started and founded, and certainly quite the accomplishment. So I want to kind of dive into that a little bit, and a lot of our show will be centered around leadership in that environment. But just for a few minutes here, let's play a word association game, and I'll just kind of bring up the names of companies, and then you do a little description of each one.
Sure.
So when I say 7.2,
Baby. That was the first one. So I definitely think Baby that we started 15 years ago. This is actually our 15th year. So that was kind of the if you will, the baby, the foundation, the first. And it's a digital creative marketing agency. We build websites and online ads and online games and videos and things like that. And it was just my business partner and co-founder, Nick Murto. That was the first one that we kind of came together on and said, hey, we need to do this. This is great. We had worked for another advertising agency that was a full service ad agency.
Okay.
And Nick and I just wanted to do digital. So we said, you know what? We don't want to do TV, print, radio. We just want to focus on digital. And this was 2004. And we decided to start the company. So yeah, it's been fun. It's been a crazy ride, super crazy. But it's really again, when I said baby, it's really been the genesis of kind of everything else, if you will. So it was kind of like the first one, kick things off, get things going, and allowed us to do all of these other ventures as well. So,
awesome. So then 14.4?
14.4 was about 3 years later. Funny thing is, very much the same type of agency. It's a creative marketing agency, but a little bit different twist in the sense that when we started it about 12 years ago, they come alongside advertising agencies that, kind of like I mentioned earlier, kind of those full service ad agencies who need a little extra web development help. So they're doing a campaign for a client. The agency's doing the TV, the print, the radio, and they say, hey, we're also doing a website, or we're doing some online ads for this. Can you come alongside and help them and help us? And so that's really what 14.4 does. They come alongside and help. Though in the last 2 to 3 years, 14.4 started to do more direct work as well. So they're actually kind of play on both sides of it. So help their agency partners with campaigns they're doing, and then they are doing more and more direct work for clients.
Any competitive juices that come into play there? Or?
Yeah, I mean, actually, yes. So in the early days, it was like, okay, we both got our respective things, and from day one, Nick and I and my partner, we hired a guy named Jeff Oswalt, who's the president, amazing guy. He runs 14.4. He does an amazing job. Has really built the team and the culture there, and has some wonderful people that work with him to do that. But there definitely has been, not only, I guess you could say, on some level between us, so Nick and I of running 7.2 on a day-to-day basis. There's some competitive things with against Jeff, which is awesome, and it only helps build the business. But then as the teams as well, there's some competitiveness. I kind of joked that it's a little bit like Big Brother, Little Brother.
Okay.
And so the 7.2 being the older one and kind of the older brother, like there's definitely some competitive that comes out. We share a building together downtown, and so we're definitely in the same space. And even though they're two separate companies, that there's definitely a rivalry there.
Well, that could be healthy too. A lot of good things.
No, absolutely. Well, I think you think about it from what we're doing on a regular basis, developing and building technology and, building cool creative experiences for clients. That's a really big deal. And so we are kind of pushing one another, like, oh, we did this for AT&T. Oh, we did this for Amazon. We did this for, Callaway Golf. And so you there's this push back and forth for we can do something better than that. So it's cool. Both companies create some really cool stuff. I'm always impressed with what comes out of them. Yeah.
Nice. Well, I have an older brother, so I'm kind of on the side of I always side with the younger guy.
Understandably, right? Yeah, understandably. Yeah.
So Union.
The Union. So, actually, believe it or not, kind of in the timeline, it was Method, which is our juice bar. So Nick and I were traveling all over the country for work, and we were, at the time, I think Nick and I were both we tried crazy things together. Probably why we were both entrepreneurs and work well together. But we were both eating vegan at the time and like really loving that from a kind of healthy living aspect.
Yeah.
And we started, Nick was like, hey, I think we should start a juice bar. And I was like, what? Like, are you sure? Like, I don't know. And he's like, yeah, I think, we both enjoyed going to juice bars all over the country, but it was like Spokane didn't really have a good, juice bar at the time downtown. There was the one in Huckleberry's, which I think is still there, which is a great place and it really is a great juice bar. But there was nothing else in Spokane and nothing downtown. And so, I think it was 2012, we started Method Juice Cafe, and so it's completely vegan, even though we kind of don't we don't really shout it from the rooftops. It's just the way we think it's a good way. I don't eat vegan anymore. I was vegetarian for about 3 years. I think Nick was about the same. I'll throw some meat here and there, and I love a good quality meat. But yeah, it's a great thing for Spokane. We think it really helped elevate kind of the healthy eating scene in Spokane and just kind of what was the offerings. And I like to think in a little bit of education as well, like why this is good and important and necessary for your body. And it's all organic, which we believe in and push. So that was, Method Juice Cafe. And then I think maybe a year or two after that, Nick and I started the Union, and that's yoga, spin, and TRX. And Nick really wanted to start a yoga studio in Spokane and kind of wanted to do something different than had ever been done in Spokane. Again, having traveled the country for work and then going to different juice bars and gyms. Nick had seen some cool things that he wanted to do. He's definitely the idea guy. Nick is really big about kind of, hey, we should try this or do that. I tend to be kind of the operational, like, let's figure out how to make this happen. And so Nick kind of comes up with a big idea, and then some of the early stage things, and I kind of come in some more of the operational, definitely the finances and things like that, and figure out how to kind of solve that. And then collectively we kind of figure out the management side of it. But it's been a really fun journey. Those businesses are, of course, completely 180 degrees from digital technology and stuff like that. But super fun, super cool, good for Spokane. We like to believe make it a place that that we want to live in, like that has those kind of offerings. And so Yoga Spin, TRX, the Union's a cool place to go. Good vibe, good culture, I would say, like within our members. Just we tend to be like predominantly women. There are definitely some men that go and some men that are really I would say hardcore and regulars, which we love. But it tends to be a bit more women. But they have a great tribe. I mean, they are passionate and just there for each other. And I think Nick and I are appreciate and excited that we've been able to kind of help build something like that. There's some other great gyms in Spokane, really. I mean, there really are. There's some wonderful places. So it's fun to be kind of another one within kind of some of that cool stuff that's going on. So that's been about 5 or 6 years that the Union's been around. So we have one downtown. Both of them, there's a Union and Method, both downtown, 2 separate locations. And then the one up north is across from the old Costco that's up there in North Spokane. And they're in the same building together, so they kind of help feed one another, which is cool.
That's right. Yeah. I've driven up there. So from my perspective, anytime I have a bad day that needs to be reversed or a good day that needs to be celebrated, I go down and get one of those, let's see if I say it right, acai bowls. That's it. And those things are life-changing.
Acai bowls are so good. I know more and more people need to do that. Be like, what? This is fantastic.
Exactly.
And I don't care how you say it. Acai, hey, go in, try it. You'll like it. They're legit, they're good. They're tasty, for sure.
Awesome. So there's 2 others that kind of hit my radar here, Strategy Labs and then Access to Experience.
Yeah. So
tell me about those.
So I joke that Nick and I are just dumb enough and just egotistical enough to think we can do all this and like make it happen, right? So, and somehow we tend to thrive and find a way. But so Strategy Labs is about a year and a half ago. We got into partnership with a guy who was wanting to start an agency, or he had a small agency, a couple people that he was doing some great work. And we were like, hey, how would you like to really kind of blow this up? Well, I think Nick and I can bring in our large national clientele and start to kind of layer on this service with them and start those conversations, as well as Nick's and my years of running and growing agencies. And we said, hey, why don't we partner and come alongside one another and do this? So that's what we did. And so Strategy Labs was already kind of there, and I guess, if you will, Nick and I were kind of hopefully a little bit of gasoline that will help grow that. So now they're at 10 people, really growing into some of 7-2's national clientele, which is exciting, as well as kind of building up more of their own clientele and growing their teams. They already had some other national clients. And so it's programmatic media buying, so buying ads on Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn and Google and things like that. So really we do a lot of generating sales for e-commerce companies, a lot of that. We do a lot of lead generation for different companies, and but it's fun. It's a great business, good people there. Ramsey Prufnik is the president, so he actually runs that, much like Jeff runs 14.4. He's just a brilliant guy, and he really gets it, and is excited about growing that and doing some cool stuff. So Nick and I are more, if you will, kind of board of directors, and really kind of help get them moving in the right direction and all that, and then just come along for support and for advice and that kind of stuff. But Ramsey does a great job. So
nice. That's
Strategy Labs. And then Access to Experience is kind of a passion project, really. It's a software. I kind of joke that it's a Match.com for basically educators and professionals to connect. So I believe that we need to get more of the real world into the classroom and connected with teachers. Teachers are out there, working really hard, doing a great job to build great, curriculum and do great things for their students. But sometimes they need a little extra help, and they need a little, real world guidance, and they need a lifeline to, the real world to be like, hey, I'm teaching this engineering class, but I would love to be able to connect with an engineer to either bring it in my classroom and speak about, civil engineering, or to say, hey, can I share with you the curriculum that we're working on? I was thinking about making this addition. What do you think? But having that lifeline to the professional world, I think, is really important, and creating a tool that's really, really simple to be able to reach out and find a professional in your industry that you're teaching in. Or if you're doing a career fair, or you wanting to maybe even set up job shadows or internships, it's a great connector for that. So that's really what Access to Experience is. So it's literally access, the number 2, experience.com, and it's great for educators out there who are looking to bring in more real world experience into their classrooms.
That's awesome. It sounds like it could change the educational system. Like, I guess bringing in real world experience has been a challenge for.
Yeah, they're all so busy, and they have so much going on, and they believe in it, and they want to make it happen. And when you see it, when they really do bring in some of that real-world experience, their eyes light up like, yes! Like, it either totally supports what they were already doing, and I think there's value in that, or it opens their eyes to new things they could be doing, and to maybe make a pivot or a change. And so the thing is, they're just so busy, trying to be great teachers, that they don't always have the time to be able to get on the phone and look up a company and call the directory and talk. Hey, is there anyone there who maybe, I can maybe talk to? These are people who've said, hey, I'm willing to do this. Literally have raised their hands, said, I'm in. Let's do it. I want to help education. And so it's pretty great. I think we have over 200 professionals on there. I think over 300 educators on there. We've facilitated close to 500 interactions, so it's been pretty great. Amazing. Yeah, it's a cool tool. We have a great partnership with our local Greater Spokane Incorporated.
Oh yeah.
So they're involved, and they help with the marketing of it and all of that, and they've done a great job of being a big partner, as well as the Workforce Council here in Spokane. So two entities that care deeply about kind of growing workforce in Spokane. So that's amazing. That's really what, at the end of the day, what it is, right? We're trying to get these kids to be better educated about what's out there, what they might be passionate about, what they want to do, and get them into jobs that are adding value to our community as a whole.
Talk about making a difference. Yeah. Well, shoot, if we stopped the podcast at this point, I think we'd capture a lot of interest already. But so this has been awesome. But let's. I want to jump into the meat of some cool leadership topics around kind of what you have done in the success of building these companies. So first off, I mean, you have experienced, I guess there's 6 companies that you have helped found.
Sure.
And talk about the life cycle that a company goes through from startup until, whatever stage you want to stop at. But I imagine you're starting to see a lot of commonalities between life cycles, and then what are the differences that are out there too?
Well, I mean, there's definitely those early stages where you do whatever you possibly have to make this thing work, right? And then we always said that when we started 7-2, the digital creative agency, take any project you possibly can, because cash flow is incredibly important, right? So any business that's getting going, they've got to recognize what's it going to take to get cash coming through the door, to get moving, to get real customers, and unless you're in a business where you're purely a software play, where you're doing just, hey, this is early on, it's going to be about the product development and things like that, and you've got whether investors that are paying for all of that, I think that's great, but let's be honest, at some point you still gotta get customers, and that's the name of the game while we're here and what we're doing. And so in the early days you do everything you possibly can to kind of get that going, and then you're also working your tail off, and your team is working their tail off, because you're doing everything usually with a smaller team than probably needed. You probably need a bigger team than you have, but you're just you got what you got, and you're trying to make it happen. And I think that's always been the case for us, so we've always been kind of working hard to make that happen. But and then you kind of you start to see some success, you start to get that you start to get those customers coming in. And then for us it was always about let's try to look for clients that would do a couple things. One, we're reoccurring. We always wanted to find somebody that we didn't want to keep chasing. If we can get somebody to come in, understand the value that we bring to the table, and then really kind of be that strong anchor client, if you will, that was a big deal for us. So we were lucky in the early days. AT&T became that for us, and so that was really important. And they had lots of online advertising and things that they were doing. So, and we proved to be a good partner, and so they just kind of kept us in the fold. And and that, so for any business, right, strategically, you're looking for that kind of client or that kind of customers. Hey, who's going to keep buying from me? Whether you're a manufacturing company or whatever. Hey, who's somebody's going to need my material, need my stuff on a regular basis, and I can build a strong relationship with them, and that is based on delivering on time, that is based on trust, that is based on great communication. Those things are incredibly important. And when you prove that, and then you make a point to being with them, right? So just because we're here in Spokane, it didn't ever preclude us from getting on a plane, being with clients. So we were in Seattle a lot, we were in Atlanta a lot, LA, New York. We make it a point to be with clients, and we know that that's part of who we are, and that face to face is incredibly important.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the second thing was finding clients who kind of build a little bit of credibility to what you're doing. So I always say, in the early days, do whatever you possibly can to get a client that you can put on your roster, that somebody else is going to look at and be like, whoa, they trust you? Okay, I can trust you, right? So does that mean if you took this job that maybe you lost a little bit of money on it in the beginning, but it ended up being a good, a client that was in your list that somebody else could look at and be like, hey, wow, if MTV was an early on for us as well. If MTV trusts you, that's a huge company out of New York. Wow, maybe and that really helped us, particularly in the New York market. Well, yeah, they're right down the hall. If they trust you, then we can trust you. That So we ended up doing work for Nickelodeon and CMT and Comedy Central and some of those. And so
they just fed off of each other.
Yeah, right. So that's a big deal, right? So from a life cycle standpoint, it was just getting those early clients like that, and then growing, and then for us it was kind of fits and spurts. We were 10 to 15 people for a long time, and life was good. I loved the company at 15 people. We were we weren't dying to be huge or grow or anything like that. But then we had some big successes within some of our clients, and before we knew it, we had to hire 10 people, and it was just go. Mm-hmm. So that's great, and you get excited. But then from a life cycle standpoint, you're like, oh geez, we need more cash, right? It doesn't just come right away, right?
Yeah.
So for us, we had to then be look around and be like, well, what does that look like? How do we do that? Well, we were lucky that we had already built a great relationship with a community banker. He's actually at First Interstate Bank. His name's TJ Brill, and he was somebody who believed in us as human beings, and then also believed in who we are and what we were creating in our company, which is important. But huge. I think at the end of the day, I think what really TJ would probably say is, well, no, I just trusted those guys. At the end of the day, I knew that when push comes to shove, they would do whatever it would take to keep this business going and work as hard as they possibly can. I would say he took a bet on us. I think he believed in what we were doing and liked kind of our company, but I think he believed in us, and I tell everybody, if you're starting a company, make sure you've got somebody in your corner that believes in you, who's there for you, that can help you when it comes to cash flow and things like that. So we ended up getting a line of credit with him, which helped us fund a lot of that to kind of get going and to pay for that, right? So when you're paying for salaries today, but your company's not paying you for 30, 60, 90 days, you need cash flow today. So
definitely,
as we grew, that was a really big deal. And then, before we knew it, we're 30, 35, 40. We got as high as like 55. And again, we were never about like just grow, because Nick and I just don't believe that that's healthy. We think you have to have regular growth, and that's good, but not like we're not trying to get to be the biggest company ever. I mean, and I respect those who want to do that. We just never wanted that for our companies. But, then we got, we were 55 people. This is probably 3-4 years ago. And then there was some changes in the market. Some of the work that we were doing at Seven2, some app development that we were doing for some really, some big companies, they wanted it for like pennies. Like they were, they were being squeezed on their end to try to monetize it. So the development of it, they wanted it super, super cheap. And it was just getting tougher and tougher to create that. And so Nick and I had to look at each other and make some hard business decisions. Be like, you know what? I don't know if being in this business, these big app games that we were developing. I mean, we did one for Finding Dory movie for Disney.
Wow. We
did one for Dora the Explorer. We did one for Paw Patrol for kids, with Nick Jr. But some of that work just got really tough. It got really, that's a tough market. And so Nick and I had to be like, I don't know if we're set up well to take this, and I don't know if we can pivot fast enough to make this work. So we actually had to scale back, and so we ended up kind of getting out of some of that business. So the life cycle was kind of crazy. I think if I've learned anything is you gotta have to be ready for every turn. And if you're kidding yourself if you think like, oh yeah, we've totally got this on lockdown and we know exactly what the next step is, like I mean, I think you absolutely have to be ready for that crazy turn, or to be able to make the hard decisions to get out of a business that maybe isn't as good, right? Like we're not seeing the cash flow here, it's not working. And so I think the life cycle definitely is a little crazy, and I think we're always, it's been 15 years at 7.2, we're always just trying to find a good, healthy, happy rhythm of, there's enough work coming in, there's enough good people to do the work, and to kind of keep that going from a management standpoint.
Yeah. So I got to stop on this for a second. It's pretty amazing. You talk about how you have in leadership in this type of a business life cycle. You've been a leader in startup companies, and then you've been a leader throughout when those companies pivot and change directions. There's not a lot of people that can do that. There's a lot of companies who have been underneath the leadership of their founder, and then there comes a day that, this has to be passed on to somebody else because their competencies are different. How have you accomplished continuing to lead in these different cycles?
Well, I think having a good partner. Nick and I are, some people would call us yin and yang. We have our differences, but when we come together, we have some great strengths combined. And I believe wholeheartedly in the partner model. Like a lot of people in the early days, like, you're crazy, don't do this. Because we're 50-50 in all of our ventures.
Okay.
And a lot of people said, well, what happens when, somebody's got to make a decision? What does that look like? And neither one of us were ready to take 49%. So we were like, well, we got to figure this out at 50-50. And but we just complement each other well. And I think he and I, maybe where I lack, he can add some expertise and vice versa. And I think we're both, as type A personalities as we both are, we're also, I think, wise enough to like listen to one another and say, you know what, like, I'm wrong, you're right, like that, so I think that's been good for us. I think any leader has to be conscious of kind of their surroundings and listen to whether it's team members or a partner, and to recognize when they might not be right, and they might have to take a leap of faith to make this, to work and to make a change. And that's okay. You're going to learn from it. There's been a lot of decisions where I've had to, kind of bite my tongue and say, you know what, I think you're right, let's do this. And I'm so glad I did. That my partner was right, and I'm glad we did that. And there's been very few times where I've been like, oh, you were completely wrong. I mean, I can even, it'd be hard for me to think back to many of those. Really, it's been a super great partnership where I've been lucky enough to be listened to my partner, and that we've agreed upon, like, that is the right path, let's do that. And I hope you would say the same thing, vice versa, that we've kind of added that to one another. I think, I appreciate your kind words, and I think there's definitely been a lot of luck along the way as well. But I think we've also been smart in listening to our own employees. Nick and I knew kind of what the original, and this is, I think, very true with a lot of the work that we've done. If you look back and kind of dissect it, we kind of know what the original structure should look like and what kind of how it should be modeled and set up from a financial standpoint, from a management standpoint, all of that.
Sure.
But then we know to hire the right people and let them do some really good work. And so we've been really fortunate to, like Jeff at 14.4, just a really brilliant guy and incredibly driven. Eric, who works there as well with Jeff, just smart as all get out. And you know, Nick and I listen to them, and when they make good suggestions and changes to the business, you know, we're willing and able and say, hey, yes, that's a good point. And I think any leader has to not only do you have to set vision and be strong and kind of figure out the path, and I think that's what Nick and I have always done, but then I think along the way, you know, listen to your team and be open at times to let them speak into some of this work.
Finding a good balance between those two.
It is, and it's absolute balance, because you can't just sit back and be like, yeah, whatever you want, no problem. Because on many respects, there's a reason why Nick and I are in these roles and we make these decisions and that we're, you know, strong on them, is because we do, you know, have good vision of what needs to happen. And so you've got to trust yourself, right? On many levels as a leader, you got to trust yourself and say, yeah, this is why I'm doing this. But then I think you do have to also be open ears and being conscious of your team. And if you did do the good hiring in the first place, to listen. And we've made some really good changes to the business because they were implemented by our teams. And that's, you know, incredibly important. So I can't take all the credit. That's basically the end of what I'm saying. Is we can't take all the credit. We've got some really good people.
So, and that's key. I'm wondering, in a market like Spokane, you know, this isn't a Seattle or Portland or a bigger market. So how do you identify the right people and the right talent in a mid-sized market like Spokane?
You know, it's been surprisingly easy. There really are fantastically great people here in our market who want to be here. I think there's something wonderful about that, who want to live in Spokane, who recognize the importance and value and reasons to be in Spokane. I love working with those people. And I think, you know, we've had to be conscious of hiring some great people, setting great vision, but then giving them the space to do good work and like to step back. And we're pretty diligent in our hiring practices, in our interviewing and all of that, and we kind of know, if you will, kind of what we're looking for. But so we, you know, when we can find those people and then key in on them, then we kind of over-index on those people and like, hey, how do you get them into roles where they are speaking into stuff and they are, you know, adding value, and you recognize their importance, and you maybe elevate them into some more management roles, right? So I think we're super conscious of that, and she's great. We need to put her into more of a management role or speaking into this, because she's going to be really great for the company. So recognizing that, seeing that, and then elevating those people to give them that chance. And so we try to be very conscious of that. But I'm always impressed with the graduates that come out of our colleges, the people that are already in good jobs that you're just lucky enough to meet, you know, somewhere, and then they hear your vision and what you're doing, or they've maybe heard something about your culture, and they're like, oh, I want to be a part of that, and you know, you're grateful. So, you know, I think that's for any company, right? Like, if you build a good, strong company, you do big things, you do great things, and you have a good, strong culture. And a culture to me is not like Nerf guns and a beer 30. That's not culture. The culture is how you approach work, how you approach one another, your commitment to one another, your how you value one another, and all of that. Like, it's really about that team ethic and working together, and the values that you as a company share. And that's, for us, we have 7 values that we share as a company, and those things are really big to us, and we make sure that everyone knows those values are. We at Seven2, we actually do surveys on each other and on, hey, are we living into these values? And you know, it's a bit of an accountability thing, and so we know that these people that we find, and like we make sure they are living into these values and ensure that, hey, this is the vision that we've set. Are we doing what we're supposed to?
Right. So the thing for me is, culture is not just what companies say they are. It's what are the people inside of these companies actually doing, and how are they interacting with each other on a day-to-day basis, which I believe is set by the leadership. But I've seen companies where it's like, on the surface, you know, maybe news articles say, you know, they do all these things. You mentioned Nerf wars and that kind of thing, and it's like, we have this special culture, but you walk into it and it's completely different how
Yeah.
the people are actually interacting. So I like that distinction of, how are people actually operating on a day-to-day basis. And
Yeah, for our culture, Nick and I always say we're trying to do two things particularly, I guess maybe three. We want to create an environment where good people want challenging work, right? So whatever it is, we're trying to bring in and cultivate challenging work within what we're doing. That's incredibly, incredibly important. So we want good, challenging work for everybody. That's what good employees want. And then we're trying to create a good environment where they have the right people that when they come to work and they look across the table at somebody or across the desk, they're like, man, I'm so glad I'm working with her. Like, she's amazing. I appreciate her as a human being. She's great at her job. Like, so Nick and I are very conscious of that. So if anyone's not doing that, you're possibly affecting your culture, right?
Absolutely,
if you're allowing some of that to flourish, or somebody who's not doing their job or not living into the values, like, that's an issue. And like, you got leadership has to step in and do something about it, right? So we want to create this environment where when you do look across the desk, you're like, wow, yeah, he's amazing. I appreciate the work he's doing. And then I guess I kind of said it. The third thing is appreciation. So Nick and I believe wholeheartedly that appreciation is a huge part of a culture and what we're about. Any person wants challenging work, but then they want to be appreciated for that and know that they are adding a value in their efforts. That's what any of us want, right? Is to feel appreciated. Like, wow, I just busted my butt for this company. I'm doing great. I'm working hard. I love that they know that I'm working hard and they care. And I think that comes from, Nick and I believe that it comes both from the management. Like, I think leadership has to speak into that and remind, we need to make sure we're doing a good job of going to someone's desk, getting down and saying, hey, I just want to let you know, I think you're doing an amazing job here. I saw what you did on that project, or, that's all incredibly important. But then it has to come from one another. So when you know that your team members appreciate you, it's that great feeling that, like, yeah, okay, they know how I'm adding value, and so we have a lot of things in place to ensure that those things are happening, and we're vocal about it, and that they can appreciate one another, because it's so good for culture.
Awesome. Talk about a success story that's happened with your culture or acquiring some talent. Say you hired somebody and then they just exploded or flourished in the company. Anything like that?
Yeah, I think we've recognized. I'll take 1440 example, and I mentioned Eric Lewis earlier. He's an amazing guy. A guy came in, was one of our producers, meaning he was a project manager with clients. Worked really hard. You could tell early on that Eric treated the company as if it was his own, and I love that. I love that when someone recognizes, okay, they'll treat me well if I treat the company well, and he always had that mindset. And over time, and it wasn't super fast. I mean, it takes time and to build trust and all of that. But he's rolled into kind of being the number 2 at 14.4, and he's just really earned it. I mean, he's just an amazing guy who had great vision, who was always grateful and thankful and appreciated us as management, but then was also living into that culture that we said, appreciating other employees. And was always making decisions as if it was his. And, I like to think that he's been rewarded because of that. And I think those are great traits when someone can do that. But of course, hopefully along the way, he felt like, on many respects, that, that it was his, or that his contributions were valuable and adding to it, or otherwise he probably wouldn't do it. But so I think, he recognized, hey, if I kind of come in here and do great work and that it's gonna get me rewarded. And I like to believe that that's true with everybody, whether it's getting a bonus at the end of the year or being promoted within the company. But I think that leadership has to recognize those things, has to diligently be with those people and say, hey, I do see it, right? Because you might see it as a leader, as leadership, and I think this sadly happens way too much. Leadership is like, wow, Kristen is really knocking it out of the park. I've been hearing so much about Kristen. She's doing such a good job. And then we never tell Kristen that she's doing a good job. So it's like, you got to make sure you close the loop. Nick and I call it, we got to close the loop on that. And you got to make sure if you're hearing those things, make it a point to send an email to Kristen or whatever, and just that you got to, that she feels like, okay, this is being noticed, right? And so, so we've had some great luck with good people growing up within the companies and taking leadership roles. And we just, at 7.2, just recently we had a number of people grow into our associate creative directors. So we took a number of high-level creatives and made them associate creative directors, and that was really about getting more responsibility and taking more things on, being larger brand ambassadors for our clients, and it's been really fun to see them kind of grow into that and do some really amazing work.
That's really cool. On that kind of a note, what can aspiring leaders or even fresh college grads do to position themselves to really flourish? And you might not start out as a leader today, but how can you position yourself to be elevated in a company, or maybe even start your own company someday? What are skill sets?
Well, I think humility, right? So I mean, as corny as that sounds, like the idea of humility. And I mean, going back to Eric at 14.4, he definitely was a humble guy in terms of like, hey, I'm here to help. I'm here to make this better. And he was, he wasn't like, give it to me. He knew he was going to earn into this, and that's incredibly important. And I think that's important for anybody today. Is like, you know what, my time will come. Like, if you have that attitude that my time will come, this will be recognized, I'm going to bust my butt and make this work and work really hard, I guarantee it will. Because performers, shine. And so people need to remember that you're not going to get the big promotion tomorrow, that you got to put your time in, that you got to work hard, that you got to be recognized, you got to be a self-starter, you got to be entrepreneurial, you've got to treat the company like as if it was your own, a little bit, and do that. Nick and I, one of our core values is being solutions oriented. So this idea that you're always looking for ways to solve the problems, to the challenges that are facing you. But if you come to us and you're just like, gosh, this is just horrible, and this is hard, I don't know what to do, and you don't come back with hey, these are the ways I'm going to tackle this. At least like, hey, can I talk to you about these ways that I'm wanting to tackle this? Yeah. Then we're kind of like, we'll shrug our shoulders and be like, well, okay, what are you going to do about it? It's because we want to see people trying to solve their own problems, that are being solutions oriented, that are recognizing the importance and the kind of the diligence, with that. And people will see that. People will see that, wow, she's really taking the time to do that and work hard and make this happen. And it gets noted. And so I think that's what people have to remember, that it's not going to happen tomorrow. Mm-hmm. You've got to put the time in. You've got to be recognized and see that. And so I think that's what I tell a lot of people, is just have that humility, work really hard. It's going to get recognized. It's going to come. I think there is huge value in seeing somebody who you think embodies that and getting a relationship going, right? So whether we say mentorship or, you can call it what you will, but like if you see that in somebody at the company you're at, if you see, wow, you hear what a great leader they are, or you witness it yourself, like what would it mean to go to coffee with them once a quarter or once a month, or, hey, going to them and saying, hey, I would love to learn some new things, or I'd love to be able to run things by you, right? Yeah. That means that person who wants to grow into be a leader has to be proactive, right? It's they're making a concerted effort to go reach out to somebody to be able to learn some things. That's incredibly important, but you have to be the one to be proactive to do it. Right?
Yeah, people aren't always going to just reach out and say, you need to do this.
And I think sometimes they want that, or they I hope I just get recognized. And again, I do think hard work gets recognized and will. But you also need to reach out if you're wanting to grow and become a better leader and be mentored. Like, you've got to go out and seek that. And whether it's within your own company or outside of that, I think there's huge value in trying to find somebody. And I think on that note, you can't expect too much. Like, someone's not going to text with you every single day to give you the answers. Yeah. It's like, hey, be willing to and be open and honest about what kind of this relationship could look like. Can we meet once a month and have coffee, or just sit down? Maybe it's once a quarter, but what's ever right for that mentor-mentee relationship. I think that that it can work. But and of course, I'm a huge fan of the very traditional ways, the books, right? There's so many great books. I mean, even as simple as the 1 Minute Manager is an old management book that's really still pretty valuable today. About there's some pretty good management techniques in there. I just think that going and reading some books and getting some information that way can be incredibly valuable if that's how you digest that kind of information. I mean, today, podcasts, right, like this, or I mean, there's a lot of good stuff out there to learn and to listen and to
go on Audible and let somebody read
exactly.
At you.
I do it on my. I still right. So 15 years in. I mean, I'm 20. 2 years in from I guess or something like that on the business side, but I'm still listening to books. I mean, I was on the way to work today on my commute. I'm listening to a great book, and it's just, that's incredibly important. Those continual education for any of us, I think, is incredibly important. And honestly, not only from just purely a step 1, step 2, step 3 to make this happen, but really from inspiration. I think sometimes I read books or I listen to books just purely to get inspired to be like, yeah, I could take this on. I could do that.
I know.
And I think there's something beautiful about that inspiration that comes from that we have to remember. It's not just always about this step by step, but you know what? I just feel inspired to go do this. It gives me that kind of excitement.
I feel the same way. Honestly, some of the books that I read are like, man, these 5 steps, it's too simple or too cheesy. But when you step back, it's like, this is getting me in the right mindset to think about things that make me a better leader.
Absolutely.
It's pretty cool.
I think that's huge.
Absolutely. One of the funny things that I did at one point in my life was I would go on Audible and I would turn it up to 1.25 times, and I'd start getting used to that. And then pretty soon this guy's just rattling books off to you, and you can pick it up at 2 times.
Well, here's one for you. I was listening to a venture capitalist talk on a podcast. I'm fascinated with venture capital and kind of investing and all of that. And there's a guy named Mark Andreessen who's just he started Netscape back in the day. Now has a really, really successful venture capital firm, A16Z. And I was listening to him talk about something, and they have a lot of different industry practices within their venture capital firm. And somebody was asking how do you stay up on this, right? Medical and manufacturing and software, and he said if there's an industry or something he doesn't know, he'll go and find an industry website or something about it, and he'll take his there's an accessibility feature within the iPhone that it will read to you the entire page. So so you can it's this thing where you set it up, you do these 2-finger swipe down, and it'll start at the top of the page and read all the way down. So he'll just put in his earbuds, and in the morning he's making cereal, getting ready for work, and he'll just be listening, and so he's just always digesting information about an industry. And I was always kind of inspired by that.
That's cool.
I mean, it's important, right? I could do that, and I've since set my iPhone up to do that, and I do it sometimes where I'm I don't know anything about that, and cryptocurrency and all this kind of stuff. You're I gotta figure this stuff out, and these are big deals, and but start learning some of that stuff that way, and it's a good way to do it.
What I like about that is passive content. You could be doing it while you're running or working out or
absolutely
driving to work. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So, well, what's next on the horizon, do you think? You talking venture? Are you going to start a venture capital firm or maybe a bank?
I don't know about a bank, but I don't know about a bank, but definitely, I think there's definitely some investment in the future. Would like to start some sort of a model where, Nick and I've talked about it for years, what that could look like, where you really came alongside somebody, and it wasn't just a money play, giving and investing, but maybe it was larger wraparound services, marketing, finance, that kind of stuff, and really, a little bit more of an incubator style, if you will, and finding a way to do it tied to money. But there's some interesting models out there like that. I think that I would like to get more involved in that. I love working with and helping entrepreneurs and see them live into their own goals and excitement, and kind of coach them along the way. There's a number of different ones that I work with that I'm just excited about, and I want to do more and more of that kind of thing. So that's big for me. I want to see definitely that. But then, honestly, I'm a big nonprofit guy. I really, whether it's access to experience, or I sit on some other local boards, to be able to put some time and energy into those and see them flourish and to do some more good for our community. I think leaders are called to do that. I think it's absolutely necessary that you recognize your leadership traits, and you see where you can add those and plug them in to make where you're living a better place.
Right.
And so I'm excited to do more of that kind of work in the future, and want to be able to put that. I mean, don't get me wrong, I still got plenty of work to do at 7.2 and 14.4 and all of these, but I think there's some fun things on the horizon for sure.
Yeah. Well, guys like you are always looking for something. What's next, and next cool thing to do. Well, this has been awesome. Thank you for sharing a little bit about your leadership style and thoughts on leadership. It's been awesome having you on the show. Thanks.
Wow. Yeah, thanks, James. It's been fun just to kind of be a part of this and talk about this. And I hope somebody out there took a little bit from it and can run with it. And I think that business can be a great thing to build wonderful communities, right? Whether it's giving jobs or hopefully making a couple dollars within your company to be able to give back into the thing. And so for me, it's exciting to be a part of this, and I'm excited for what more Spokane can do. I think we're on the horizon of some really fantastic things. You're starting to see Spokane get on a national, get seen nationally as, hey, this is a great place to live. There is a great place for companies to come and start their companies and bring their companies in. So we're seeing more of that. Like, we're lucky. This is very exciting times. It's gonna be good. It's gonna be good.
Awesome. Well, it's been an honor to have you on, Tyler.
Thanks so much.